Atari Anniversary Edition. Play 12 of the best classic Atari games with all of the fast action, sights, and sounds you remember. I bought this game because it said there was a free Atari sticker inside. First impressions aren't good, and I'm not even talking about the lack of a sticker. In most video games, the main menu loads while the splash screens are playing in order to avoid unnecessary wait times. However, here the game only starts loading once these are finished, so there's an additional 10 to 20 seconds you have to sit through before even reaching the title screen. What's worse is that the game forces you to pay attention to it while it loads, because if you don't hit start right away, you'll be greeted with one of the fastest demo screens I've ever seen. The menu is simple but fairly well laid out, with a lineup of games on the left and a window on the right displaying a demo of the highlighted game. While it looks a bit dated now, it still does a great job at conveying a sense that this is a celebration of Atari games. Speaking of games, there's 12 of them here, all arcade titles. The selection of games is pretty good as well, with the library covering pretty much all the major Atari arcade releases from the company's heyday. While it would have been neat to see some of Atari's console releases featured here, 2600 graphics are admittedly a bit of a tough sell, and 5200 games used this. So it's probably for the best that they focused all of their attention on arcade games. Titles that originally supported 2 players still do so here, and an overlay of the original arcade machine only adds to the sense of authenticity. Unfortunately, due to the limited resolution and the small size of some of the visuals, many games are best played with the arcade overlay turned off, with some even requiring you to scale the screen size using the in-game menu. Along with adjusting visuals, this menu can also allow you to change the controls as well as the difficulty level and speed of certain titles. All 12 games here are unlocked from the start, which is a bit of an interesting design choice. In other collections like Namco Museum, there's an additional incentive to go for high scores and try out different games to unlock bonus titles. In Atari Anniversary Edition, however, there's not really any incentive for most people to spend time in these games for anything other than the novelty of it. To be fair, it's probably for the best that there isn't any unlockable content here given the lack of an autosave function. I criticized Hydro Thunder for the same thing, but what do I know? Maybe it's like Nintendo not letting third parties publish more than 5 games a year on the NES, but with Sega and autosaving on the Dreamcast. Speaking of saving, I said the main menu was well designed, but look at it! There's no save button in sight! It's probably in the archive. While it's unquestionable that the games themselves are the main draw of Atari Anniversary Edition, the Atari archives add another layer of depth to the overall package. Nearly everything you could think of is here, from trivia on the company itself and all sorts of different accessories to demos of Atari's home console ports and flyers for the original arcade machines themselves. On top of this, there's even a handful of interviews with Atari founder Nolan Bushnell where he gives the story of the company's rise and heyday during the 1970s and early 1980s. However, despite all of this, there's still a few things missing from the archives. I assumed the save button would be in here given that it wasn't in the main menu itself, but it's still nowhere to be seen. That is, unless... oh no. They wouldn't. Well, looks like I won't be needing these for the rest of the review. Anyways, where was I? The founder of Chuck E. Cheese had just talked about some bankrupt video game company. Oh yeah, what was missing from the archive? While I praised the Atari archive feature, it has one glaring omission, that being the exclusion of any of the original manuals. This feels like a huge missed opportunity, as not only would it provide yet another look at the history of Atari games, but could also double as instructions for the actual games here themselves. Although there's already instructions for each game inside of the physical manual itself, it'd still be really cool to have them included here, even if just for the novelty. The lack of manuals in the archive is sort of like a microcosm of the problems with the game itself. For what it is, Atari Anniversary Edition comes close to being great, but its lack of a save function as well as a few too many questionable design choices hold it back significantly. Come to think of it, a lack of replayability and not being able to save are probably far worse than the archive not having instruction manuals in it. The comparison sounded much better in my head. I'm actually more mad about not getting a sticker than I am about being unable to save my progress, but that feels like more of a personal issue.